to another episode of the Habibis 2022 or season 2 or whatever you want to call it.
He's going off script.
It's already happening. We barely started.
Hold on to your chair, Rami. Someone's going off script.
I was yelling YOLO before we started.
Going off script and drinking good Arab tea. I am your host for this week, Osama Dorias.
And I am Fawzi Mesmar.
And I'm Rami Ismail, and I'm terrified.
Terrified of what's happening.
Terrified.
Which one did you like more, season 2 or 2022? How do we do this?
I kind of like all of them.
All right.
It's the Habibis. The Habibis are eternal. Khalas.
Yes.
I love the adrenaline shot at the beginning of the episode.
Before I was hyping myself up, I was like, when I was still muted, I was like yelling "Yalla" into my microphone. Sama starts, and I'm ready. Let's go.
I've missed you too.
I missed you too.
Yeah, we're recording this one a
Dr.
little
Hub
bit
with
late.
a big start of the season.
That's how you gotta go. So yeah, actually, we ended the last season with a request from our fans to write in or call in, but we don't have phones, so I guess they all wrote in. And
we could have thought about that a little better.
yeah, we should have. And let us know what their best memories, what their thoughts were about last season. Suggestions how we could improve all of these things. And we got mail. We got a bunch of mail. So how about we start with that? What do y'all think?
Let's do that.
Let's go.
All right. So we'll start with Susan, who is a longtime listener and has written in a few times. We love you, Susan. You're wonderful. Susan says, happy podcast birthday anniversary. Thank you. It's so hard to pick a favorite moment, but I could probably just say all the segues. Ooh, I love the segues.
We're good at those. Don't worry about that.
They kind of sum up the lightheartedness, creativity, and affection that characterizes the show in my mind. Even when you share deep content, it's always in the context of friendship and collaboration, something I've needed more than ever this last year.
Aww.
Oh, it was a good one. Maybe I should have left that one for last. How do you top that?
Well, speaking of friendship and collaboration, look at the email. It's like to segue the email back into itself. It's like a new meta.
We'll make it meta, exactly. We have another email from Jeff. Jeff writes, if I had to pick a favorite podcast moment, a memory, it would have to be the Osama laugh track. Hearing his disembodied laugh edited into the end of the episode, it was surreal and hilarious, and I'm so glad you committed to the bit suggested in the title. That is awesome. He goes on to say, in truth, though, there are too many great moments to count. Rami's story of Ramadan spent in the pizza shop, whose owner he later reconnected with, Fawzi's discussion of his journey from Jordan to Japan to Sweden, and everywhere in between. Dr. Hub's enthusiasm, awareness of good segues. Oh, the segues came up again. Beautiful relationship advice and infectious laughter. Aw, this is so sweet.
This is not a Habibis email. This is a Dr. Hub email.
Dr. Hub email.
This is good. This is a spin-off.
He goes on to say, no wonder he's such a great teacher. I'm going to cry.
Oh, no.
Y'all are a joy to listen to every week, and I can't wait to see what you talk about in the year to come.
Well, let me give you a second to recover. From the Discord, Sada writes, a little late to the party for this, but favorite memories from the Habibis are definitely Fawzi's story of his journey into the battlefield launch, Osama's hearty laugh that is just filled with so much warmth and joy, and Rami's stories of flight training and describing how landing works. You can absolutely tell how passionate you are and how meaningful flying is to you, and it's so cool to listen to. And whenever the Habibis talk about creativity and the creative process, very thankful for the Habibis community as well. It's been so wonderful to connect with everyone here.
It is the loveliest community by far.
It's amazing.
It really
I might be a
is.
little biased, but I still think it's true.
I feel like Osama has been promoted from Dr. Hub to Professor Hub because it's also teaching. It's not just a doctor. Ustaz.
How do you say? We say doctor. I know some people say hakim for doctor.
Yeah, we say doctor.
You say
doctor.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think hakim is a Lebanese thing, actually.
Yeah.
Might be.
Wise man, Osama.
Wise man, exactly.
Hag hub.
I love it. So,
that's going to make it really hard to pronounce for anybody who does not have Arab pronunciation.
It's a little bit easier, I think, in Iraqi. It's Haji hub. I don't know.
Haji is a little easier.
It's a harder J. So now we have an email from Hussein. And Hussein writes, the best memory I have with the podcast is a time when I was porting our game, The Tale of Bistoon. I don't know how to pronounce it. I think it's Bistoon, to Xbox for a demo event. It was my first time working with a dev kit, and you have to follow all those special rules that Xbox has with weird user logins compared to how simple it is on PlayStation. Okay, let's not comment on different platforms.
I'm not saying anything, but it's anybody is free to have their opinion.
Exactly. And I had only 1 week to deliver the port. Oh, and I was working from home all alone. So I was working 24/7 at the time. Oh, don't do that. And while working, I would play the podcast and listen to you guys keep me company.
Aww.
At the time, I was behind on a number of episodes, and I had all of the Sahur bites to listen to, which were all very good. And I just wanted to let you know that you helped me very much in that hard crunch. Well, glad that we were able to help. I'm sorry that you had to crunch. That's not
don't crunch. Take care of yourself.
Please.
It's rough, especially if you're an indie and this is your game. I can imagine, but yeah, you know what? If you have to work hard for a little bit of time, and that happens in the games industry, just make sure you take a break.
Yes, and listen to the Habibis while you do it.
And listen to the Habibis.
he goes on,
but
to
mostly
say,
take a break. Take care of yourself.
Of course, 1,000%. He goes on to say, also, if I want to point out one funny moment that stands out to me, it would be the Fauzi jumping over the fire thing.
Oh my God.
We forgot about that one.
I forgot about that.
Well, thank you for the reminder, Hussein.
Fauzi just has to absorb some smoke.
It's good for bad luck and all. This is,
sure.
Jumping over the fire is what kept this podcast going for a year. It has the protection.
Well, the Fuzz, you understand that we need you to jump more over the fire sometime soon. So because we need the second year.
53 times I have to jump over the fire. One for every episode.
Yes, and don't forget the Sahur bites. So that's another 30. So
to be honest,
I expect a video of you jumping 85 times.
Seriously, our YouTube channel needs content. I'm just saying.
Yeah. It's time for Fauzi to do some jumping.
Yeah. And if you can't find fire in a pinch, I'll take a video of you jumping over anything, really. It doesn't matter.
I'll do a body transformation the size of my calves at the end of the second season.
So we have another letter from Jose, who I believe has written in the past as well. The name is familiar. So Jose writes, I'm Puerto Rican, and we were all notorious for just figuring things out within our means, as it were. Most of our buildings on the island are made of cement and stand against hurricanes. But similarly, most homes like that also tend to be fairly short. It is not uncommon to see that some crafty do-it-yourself guy took it upon himself with some friends to build a whole other level to his house. Naturally, they almost never actually had to access the construction equipment, so they made do with whatever they could get their hands on. This, of course, amazingly illegal, but it's prevalent enough, or at least was in the 1900s. I'm not sure 1900s if he means the actual 1900s or last year or last decade. That's just about every neighborhood had at least a few houses like this. Needless to say, they were absolute hazards during hurricane season, but somehow this never deterred them. And now a question. Oh, we have a question. Do you still find it surprising when someone who does something really well claims they have no idea what they're doing? You guys have just been a delight from the day I found the podcast, and it always sounds like it just flows so naturally. So it's amazing that you think you don't know what you're doing.
We still don't. So yes,
I have no idea.
yes,
what
I
I'm
very
doing.
much believe it. We're living it right now.
I think the difference from the beginning, from when we started till now, is now we know that we don't know what we're doing, and we're okay with it, right? It's like
Right.
it's a confidence with being okay with not knowing what you're doing.
I think that's mostly. I think when people say that they don't know what they're doing, they don't mean that they don't know anything. You know, you do a thing for long enough, you'll learn some tricks. Like I've gotten really good at editing in Audacity, even though that was a skill I didn't have. And we found good programs that we record this with, and we sort of have a flow. We know when to talk about things. I think during the week, every now and then, something will happen, and we'll have a thought and be like, "Oh, I can talk about this on the Habibis," right? So you get better at things, and I think you know, in game development, you see it a lot where really renowned game developers say, like, "I don't know what I'm doing." I don't think they mean they don't know at all what they're doing. It's just that ultimately these are creative jobs, right?
Yeah.
This podcast is a creative endeavor. The game development is a creative endeavor. If you do know what you're doing something boring.
Yeah, I think, like, you know, ultimately that you don't know what you don't know, right? And I think that the more experienced people are more comfortable with not knowing. So, like, you know, the more senior designers are, the more they realize, like, oh, this is new design that I'm trying out. I've never tried this before. So here's all the techniques and systems I can put in place for me to test out how wrong I can be. And then how I can recover from that. But they're a lot more comfortable from that. But I see, like, you know, the more junior designers, they come in expecting that they're gonna nail the best design right from the get-go. And, like, we've all been through it, in which, like, you know, our first game was supposed to be the magnum opus, and in many cases, definitely mine, it barely worked at all. It's like, you know, you get more comfortable with your shortcomings over time and expect them even. And I think that's, you know, part of, like, why do you hear people saying, I don't know what I'm doing, but I know how I'm going to figure out what I'm supposed to do.
Exactly. I know how I'm supposed to not know.
Exactly.
Yeah,
right.
exactly.
Like, that's kind of it. Like, it's not that it's. Whoa, I need to cough. Give me a second.
Are you okay?
Nice. Yes. I spoke so fast that I misswallowed and then coughed. Anyway.
Clearly know what we're doing on a podcast.
We're just very good at this thing. But the thing is that we don't know what we're doing is always true for that given specific moment, right? In a creative field, because you know, you only know what you're doing when you figured the whole thing out, which is usually at the end.
Yeah.
Until you get to the end,
2020.
you don't know what you're doing. Yeah, until you get to the end, you don't know what you're doing, and then at the end, you can look at it and be like, "Oh, this was a good decision. This was poorly done. This could have been reconsidered. This was smart. This was bad. This was good." And they kind of take those learnings and go into the next thing that you don't know. Yeah. And I think it's very true for this podcast. Like, we're a year in, and Osama still can't do an intro, but it's good.
Scripts are hard, yo. But
I
think that's the title.
He's getting much better at doing our script, though. So, like, he can really recover now.
Yeah. There are expectations to be met now. Well, that's the thing. I mean, we're all designers, right? And the game design is iterative. That's just part of the process, is that whenever you're doing, if you've designed something that you've made exactly 100% before, then you're not really designing, you're just repeating. But if you're doing something new, and every podcast is a new version of a thing, right? Then like, your design intuition kicks in sometimes, where you're like, oh, I've seen this pattern before. I felt this flow before. I think this is a good direction to take this in based on the experience we've had before. But it doesn't mean that we know, like, just like what Rami said, we don't know exactly what we're doing for this specific episode, but we start to intuit it. We start to feel it.
Right. Let's put it this way. If I go into our Discord channel, our private Discord channel, the preparation for this one is you're hosting, Osama. We'll go Osama Fauzi me.
Yeah. That was it.
That was the preparation. So everything else that you're listening to is intuition. Yeah. But I you know, since we've talked about this for designers, I think it's very similar for programmers, because I'm historically a programmer. But it's the same thing, right? You get into programming, you know that you don't know programming, so you very carefully make, like, a Pac-Man.
Yeah.
or a breakout or a pong or something like that, right? And then eventually when you get a little comfortable, the first thing every programmer does is it'll go, I'm going to roll my own engine. I don't know why this keeps happening to us, but every programmer you meet went through the same, like almost every programmer you meet went through the same like phase where they just came up with like, okay, well, I can do Pac-Man now, so let's make an engine that can rival Uncharted's engine, you know? And then you start and you realize that
right?
rendering an image is kind of complicated if you're doing it from scratch, and that collision is a nightmare, and then you give up. And, you know, sometimes you give up after 2 years, sometimes you give up after 2 days. But, you know, almost everybody gives up eventually. And that's part of becoming a good programmer. It's just kind of understanding like, okay, this is what I'm good at and this is what I enjoy. And some people really end up loving doing that engine programming and they end up engine programmers. But I think it's good to not know, right? I think there's a real strength in coming at my mom always says this, coming at something unhindered by any knowledge. Right. I think there's a real beauty in that, and I think as designers we tend to search for it. We tend to search for something that is new because we know that that's where exciting stuff might happen. It's why it's so hard to just remake a thing. It's why it's so hard to just try and do something that already exists, but slightly different, right? Like I think designers are naturally drawn to problems that have to be solved rather than problems that have been solved. And sometimes that's integration, right? Sometimes that's, okay, we have existing idea A and existing idea B. Let's see if we can make things C out of it. But I think the same is true for programmers. I'm sure the same is true for artists, for musicians, for sound designers, for anybody who does a creative job. I know it's true for me in the business side of my job, right? Like I search for interesting new things, and that's just kind of how it is if you're creative, I think.
Agreed, 110%.
Anyway, emails.
We have
emails.
We have one last email. I don't know if there are any other messages on Discord, but there's one last email.
I have a few Discords left for you. Good. So who goes first?
I'll go first. I'll wrap up the emails and then you can jump into Discord. Deal?
Okay, deal.
Okay. So we have an email from Raphael. This is a little bit long, but it's worth it. It's a beautiful one. He says, one of the funniest
pressure.
One of the funniest moments I think back to every once in a while is when Fauzi segued into the end of the doily episode by suggesting that it is time to put a doily on.
There's a lot of references to the segues I see.
Yeah. We got to emphasize them now. With a subdued but nevertheless audible amount of pride for the beauty of what he just said, which was beautiful. I remember that.
Yeah.
Busted.
He goes on to say, but hands down, a real and proper favorite was Osama's relationship advice. Wow, Dr. Hub comes back again.
Dr. Hub again.
It was framed beautifully. Him announcing that he wants to say something, and Rami and Fauzi eager to give him room for it and sit with the audience for a moment. And as difficult to navigate the entire hornet's nest of telling guys how to relationship is, Osama made it seem easy. By saying, this is something I messed up, he's deliberately stepping down from the lectern, not representing as an authority and not inviting the need to oppose him as a matter of pride. By explaining how he didn't mean to cause his wife any stress, while he acted out the best intentions, he laid out notoriously difficult topic. Good intentions alone are not the ultimate get-out-of-free jail card that you too often touted as. He goes on, and why? Like I'm gonna get emotional if I'm gonna finish this, so I'm gonna skip to the last part where he says something. The most beautiful part of the email. He says, "I like a good steak pun. It was an example of a rare medium. Well done." That was so well done. Thank you.
Wow.
That was a good segue. That was a good segue. That is Habibis worthy as a segue.
I love it. I had to applaud that. Thank you, Raphael. What a beautiful email.
What a beautiful email. It was true. It was good. That was a good little moment. Let me run through some Discord. Rapid fire.
Go for it.
Sahab posts, congratulations on 1-year-old Habibis. Special thank you to Rami, Osama, and Fauzi for helping make those hours filled with joy. And also a special thank you to all the Discord Habibis for making this such a welcoming place. Again, thank you to everybody in the Habibis Discord over at discord.habibis.com for being wonderful, like genuinely wonderful. And also want to do a huge shout out to the mods over there. Let's see. Zahab wrote, thank you on the Discord. Ailey writes, Alfa Mabruk to the Habibis. It's been a real pleasure listening to you three every Friday and a bigger pleasure getting to know everybody in this Discord. Here's to 100 more years of Habibis.
Oh my God, that's a lot.
100 more years.
Let's try.
We'll give it a best shot.
How many times do I need to jump over the fire for 100 years?
It's a lot, Fauzi, but you have really big legs. It's going to be great.
Only getting bigger.
Only getting bigger. Gekitsu writes, couldn't have said it better, making a really fun and engaging podcast, not exactly trivial, but to have it spawn such a good community, that's the real test. And I would 100% agree.
100%.
Igo writes, happy birthday to my favorite gaming podcast, despite Destiny coming up way more than it should. Destiny in a really good place at the moment, just really having fun with that space horse. But seriously, thank you, Fauzi.
Wait, is that you?
Oh, that was just me. No, that was me. That was 100% me. Absolutely, that was me.
Makes sense.
Yeah, it's segues, right? But seriously, thank you, Fauzi, Rami, Osama, for creating something so special, and I can't wait to see what 2022 has in store for you all. That there is more. We don't have time to talk about more because 2022 indeed has a lot more to come. We've just started on the year, and it's been a
start.
It's been a start to the year, hasn't it?
Yeah.
What a start to the year. They usually say that January is a slow news month.
Yes, not this
Oh
time.
boy.
Since we're
Not
recording
time.
this a little later than usual, we get to talk about what just happened.
thing.
The
just happened?
big thing.
Yeah.
I was shocked to hear that Microsoft acquired Activision Blizzard.
Yes.
Yeah.
I still can't believe it. It's so hard to wrap my mind around that. I mean,
Yeah.
I knew that they wanted to make one other big purchase. I had a feeling, not that.
Sure, but like a purchase is not the purchase.
I know, and Activision Blizzard was not the big purchase that I was expecting. Honestly, I thought it would be more along the lines of a Ubisoft.
I thought Square.
Square is also
right. Square was kind of like it kind of looked like a good place to do an investment, good IP, good range, not too expensive. But this is not fair.
Yeah,
this was like the biggest acquisition in gaming history. I
by
think.
like 5x.
Yes, but exactly.
And the only reason it's 5x because the previous biggest acquisition in games was a few weeks ago, and that was at 12.8 billion. This one is at 70 billion.
Bought Zynga.
Almost 69 billion.
it's
I think.
Wow.
I think like when we look at when we're looking at it from a gaming industry perspective, Activision Blizzard is a huge company, right?
Yeah,
massive, with billions of dollars worth in the market, clearly. But then when you zoom out a bit and you look at other tech companies who have trillions of dollars of market cap, then it's an entire different ballgame. Like kind of like the purchase kind of makes a bit more sense. You go like, oh yeah, they can afford that.
Oh, they can afford it.
They can afford a lot more than that as well.
I'm not worried about them affording it. It's just when you look at this, if you look at the global ranking of like video game company values, right? You've got Microsoft, which is the only one that's sitting in the trillions, if I'm not mistaken, because obviously it's a lot bigger. They've got Tencent at 600 billion. You've got Sony at 150 billion. You've got Sigarina at 93, NetEase at 70, and then Activision Blizzard at 63. This is a company in the top 10 buying a company in the top 10, right?
Yeah.
That's why it's remarkable.
That's wild because like after that, the list kind of continues: Nintendo, Roblox, EA, Unity. But like you don't expect stuff to happen there. Like Zynga is at like 17. That was already like a remarkable thing. But then beyond that, you don't really see a lot of moves in that space.
But I think also like I know that we don't always think of it in traditional gaming, but if you look at Google Play and App Store, then that list gets bigger. Mm-hmm. Right? Yeah. And like, Google Play, for example, makes, what is it, $60 billion of revenue annually. The App Store makes $80 billion. And like, the majority of that revenue is games.
Right. Game Pass makes $200 billion a day.
If we keep mentioning it on the podcast, it will eventually.
When are we going to get our sponsorship?
I don't know, man.
Microsoft didn't buy us out.
Oh, Microsoft buys the Habibis.
Okay, sorry. This is the funniest segue. I just have to make this. Did you guys see the sponsorship offer email we got without naming the company?
I did.
I just want to let everybody know in the audience that this is probably the first like serious sponsorship like offer that we've had that way out of nowhere. It was a shaving company, which to me suggests that they didn't quite figure out who they're talking to.
I mean, it's three Arab game developers, right? So they must have a lot of beard to shave.
I'm not sure.
It makes a lot of sense to me.
I'm not sure. I think our beards stay around pretty significantly.
It could be because that episode where you guys were talking about my facial hair,
right? Yes. Oh yeah, yeah.
And then the next day the next time we spent like 20 minutes talking about my beard or something.
Right, but it's a good beard.
You're welcome, Habibis. You're welcome, Habibis.
But I was like, that is incredible. Of all the companies that could have reached out, it's a shaving company.
Microsoft will reach out eventually. They were too busy buying Activision Blizzard, but they will reach out.
Yeah,
we're next.
They'll reach out later.
We're next.
I laughed for a while that we have two. Well, effectively, Fauzi, you have no hair on your head.
I don't
and a beard.
have hair on my head either.
Osama has no hair on his head, and occasionally somewhat of a facial hair thing. And then I just have a beard that hasn't left my face since I was 17.
I always have a goatee.
Yeah, I always have a goatee.
Always have facial hair.
Yeah. Anyway, it just made me laugh. This company's pitch was effectively like, "Yep, clean shave, just clean shave, whatever you want. You can." You know,
it was a hilarious.
It was great. Anyway, back to Activision
we gotta start
Blizzard.
Somewhere, Rami. You gotta start somewhere. Then we'll be featured on the Game Pass, and then we're set.
Yeah, that's it. We just need Game Pass. We'll get 1.6 billion a day, and then.
Do you think they could put our podcast on Game Pass? That would be so meta. Just like go to Game Pass and listen to the Habibis talk about Game Pass.
Listen,
I love it.
But I'm curious what you all think of this acquisition, because that's actually the part that I'm way more curious about, because I have feelings about this.
Yeah.
Do you have feelings about
very
this?
Mixed feelings. Very mixed feelings. So number one is I really don't like the whole I don't like the messaging behind it. I understand it personally that legally they can't really say anything about Bobby Kotick and what's going to happen with him. But initially the messaging was unclear and made it sound like he was going to stay on, and then later it looked like he was going to be exiting with a golden parachute. And I understand like how these things work in the background, but I was really unhappy with how that was resolved. It felt like he was getting now it makes sense. It makes sense why the shareholders kept him there, because they wanted to profit. It makes sense why they just had to hold on a little bit more. Because before I'm like, I don't get it. What value does he bring to the company that his name, his sullied name, is going to like justify like keeping him? What value does he bring? And now I see they're just holding out a little bit more so that they could line their pockets, and that
sadly makes a lot of sense.
It makes sense. It absolutely makes sense. I get it. My brain gets it. My heart hates it.
Yeah.
And I'm not happy that he's going to get a big payout.
I mean, he was going to get a big payout anyway.
He was. But that's just not the resolution I was hoping for. That's
same.
However, I hope Microsoft is traditionally known as being a very good employer within the games industry. Of course, there's always exceptions. Your direct your direct manager is always going to have a bigger impact than the rest of the company. But in general, my friends who work for Microsoft companies, in general, they're really happy. they feel like they're respected, they're well treated, they have good systems in play. So I'm hoping that overall it's going to be a good move for people who are working in terrible conditions. Microsoft is not known to let people go at the end of production like Activision is. Like, hey, record sales, 800 people laid off. Is a normal thing at Activision. It's not at Microsoft. They have their own problems. Like, I know that they give it's hard to get a permanent status at Microsoft. There's a lot of contracts, but I'd rather a contract where you know the end date and you could do something about it than just being let go randomly whenever
out of nowhere. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I don't know.
So I hope that part, I hope mean it's good news for people.
I tweeted this yesterday, but like I'm just so, I hate it so much that it seems that one of the reasons this acquisition was possible was that the market value of Activision Blizzard took enough of a dip that it was worth opening that conversation over at Activision Blizzard, right? And I think that is part of how this deal got taken. Is Activision Blizzard was so bad to its employees that the value took a hit, and that Microsoft saw an opportunity to move in. I'm not sure if that's what happened. It's purely speculation, but kind of knowing how this industry works, I think it was definitely part of what happened here. And then the other part is just like, that's a lot of consolidation of power. It's starting to stop looking like competition between Microsoft and Sony at this point, because like Microsoft has eternal money. It doesn't end. Like, you can't, like if they bought Bethesda and that was it. Okay, but we're talking about Microsoft buying Activision Blizzard with such casual. It's almost normal at this point. Microsoft bought an incredibly big thing.
Yeah,
Sony can't compete with that. I don't know what they're.
They cannot. They bought a thing that's a third of the size of Sony, and it was nothing to them.
Yeah,
like that's really what it boils down to. Sony could not have made that purchase and cannot make a purchase as big. Just it's not feasible.
Right.
And competition is good. People like right now, I understand that a lot of people are like, oh, Game Pass is going to be great. Yeah, I don't doubt that Game Pass is going to improve.
No, I do doubt that.
Oh, I mean, in the short term?
No, in the short term, it's going to be a little better, but
yeah, in the long term, because there's no competition, it has no reason to stay better.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I'm worried about. I'm also just worried for indies at large. Like, we have less and less options to fund games, right? Game Pass has become such a big part of funding games that for an indie, it's really hard to not use it, to not want to be on it, which means that a lot of games are being shaped along the lines of Game Pass, right? Like, we need to make sure that this game might be attractive to Microsoft, which kind of returns us back to like the early days of when I was an independent developer in 2010, where really what you were trying to do is convince a room of 4 people at Valve or a room of like 6 people at Apple that your game was worthwhile, and everybody was making those games.
Yeah.
Like the whole point of indie was that as an independent developer, you make a game, and even if it's for the smallest niche, if you can convince that niche to be interested in your game, you can make enough money to make the next game. But games got more expensive, which means we needed external funding, and external funding, whether you're going through a publisher or not, right now is highly dependent on Game Pass, and it's going to be more dependent on Game Pass. Publishers fund games and then just turn around to Microsoft and go, well, you want to Game Pass this? And if Microsoft says no, then the publisher might reconsider whether they take that game at all, right? So the decision makers are getting fewer and fewer, and that's just really scary to me.
It is. Agreed. Yeah,
I think like from my point of view, I think that the competition as Microsoft sees it is beyond just the realms of the games industry. So I think this is a strategic move by them to kind of like, first of all, it prompts a response from Sony or other companies in the business, but it kind of makes it difficult for other companies outside the business to kind of go in.
Yeah.
And I think Microsoft and a lot of other companies are seeing a different future for the industry than what we see currently. And there's a lot of strategic steps into kind of taking a foothold into that future.
Yeah.
Whatever it may be, and how it's going to shift is going to depend largely on the technologies we have and how the players vote with their wallets and all of that.
That is so important right now. That the players vote with their wallet. That players vote honestly, because there are a lot of futures that are possible ahead of us, right? But it's very clear what future a lot of companies are steering towards, and I'm not sure I like that future. But maybe I'm old fashioned after 10 years in this games industry. Maybe I'm a little old fashioned.
Like a change is inevitable,
right.
And I think it's about good change is part of change, regardless, because that's the only kind of change. We can only move forward. So how we readjust as an industry, I think it's a very interesting thing to see unfold over the next couple of years. And I think Microsoft has been reputable a lot in with the developers that they worked with their ID program, with how they worked with their partners in development and all of this. Microsoft has been managing the gaming division in a
very positive way.
Very positive way, very interesting way, very consumer-facing way as well. So it'll be interesting to see how that
evolves,
goes forward as well.
Yeah, how it evolves as they gain power in the industry. Because even though Microsoft is obviously playing a bigger game, right? Like you said, it's not just about the games industry for them anymore. But I do think that doesn't change the impact it has on the industry. Like Dr. Hobb once said, intent is not the only thing that matters. Like the outcome matters too. And I do think
who's that joker?
I do think that when it comes,
who was this Dr. Hobb?
I think that it is really important that we keep focus on the games industry, right? Because that is an important part of creativity. It's an important part of expression. It's an important part of culture. And it can become monetized. It can become economy. It can become commerce. It is all those things. And I'm happy that it is all those things. But keeping the balance is going to be a really important thing over the next few years. And I'm really worried about that, with all the, and this is not Microsoft, but with semi-aggressive or aggressive movements into NFT and blockchain and these new monetization strategies that you're seeing everywhere. And, you can kind of feel the industry adjusts, right? It's very flexible. Like Fauzi was saying earlier, it's very flexible. It's very adaptable. The people in here are creatives. They're problem solvers. They'll work their way around any context that the games industry throws at them. The same way we started making roguelikes and multiplayer games when Twitch became a big thing because they're replayable and people can stream them, right? But I don't know what that looks like when this whole play to earn thing becomes a thing, or we change our industry to be completely subscription based.
Ultimately, it comes down to the players.
Right.
If the players want it, they create the market for it. If the players don't want it, then it doesn't exist. It's kind of like if we draw parallels from the movie business. Netflix is very disruptive to how people consume movies.
Right.
And if you talk to people that work in the movie business, there's a lot of people for, and there's a lot of people that really hate the Netflix model.
Right.
Some people believe that movies should be consumed in the cinema, and that's the best way. And Netflix is killing the cinema, and all of that stuff. There's a lot of opinions about it, but ultimately, Netflix exists and is a competitive force because a lot of people like to view movies that way.
Yeah.
And the cinema still exists. And a lot of movies
Blu-rays
get
still exist.
huge openings.
Physical.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And Blu-ray still exists, and all of that is because there's people that still buy them. And there's still people that still go to the cinema.
I think, and I know that is a comparison that you could make, right? But the part that worries me is that for us, there's no meaningful difference between play in each of these contexts. Right. Going to the cinema is a completely different experience from watching the movie at home. Watching the movie digitally can be a completely different aesthetic choice than owning the movie on a disc, right? But whether you are streaming a game or whether you bought a game or however you're playing the game, right? You're playing it on the same device in the same context in your living room, right? And let's also be honest, I understand that ultimately this is the responsibility of, the responsibility is a big word, but this is something that players have a lot of say in, right? What they accept, what they do not accept. But I also want to remind you that we are the industry that successfully can convince people to spend hundreds of dollars on a box that might contain a card for their favorite soccer player. Right? This is our job. Our job is to create worlds in which people ascribe value and meaning to digital things that inherently have no value or meaning, right? We're smoke and mirrors, but we're smoke and mirrors in a way that players love. That's what we're trying to do. I think that's what a good game designer, a good game developer is trying to do, is construct a beautiful fake world, right? Yeah. One that you want to be part of, one that you can grow in, that you can learn in. But we've also seen in the industry that when money becomes too much of a driver in that the games industry can take all of that knowledge of how to manipulate people into believing something is good, or manipulate people into believing a character is real or a high score is meaningful, right? That we can use it to manipulate people in very negative ways, right? To spend money when they don't have it, to keep playing when they should sleep, to fill their exams because they couldn't pull themselves away from the next competitive streak in the game that they're playing. Like, we have dark patterns. We have a history of manipulation. Our industry is very good at that because that's effectively our job, just applied evil. So
as a lot of other industries that have design at the heart of it. But what makes this industry and any other industry accountable for these things is that we need to maintain a moral code.
Yeah.
That is not in this industry, not in any industry, is measured or traced by money.
Right.
So the moral code and keeping ourselves up to standards that we set ourselves to ourselves and peers.
Yeah.
As professionals in this industry, as it does happen in a lot of other industries too. So I agree with you, Rami. It's about monitoring the change, but also in order for us to constantly maintain the conversation around the moral best practices to how we work.
Ultimately, I think there's two parts, right? There's two parts to this equation. One half is the gamers vote with their wallet. No discussion can go over what money is doing, right? It's still an industry that needs money to make games. On the other side, I think what Fauzi said is exactly right. This is a conversation that we as developers need to be having with each other in private, in public, to help people make those decisions, right? With proper understanding of what the impact is, what the risks are, what the opportunities are. And so far, I've been really hopeful about how the industry reacts to a lot of things. I think we've gotten smarter about talking about business as an industry as well, more honest about talking about business as an industry as well. But it is, consolidation of power, like these new, more exploitative models. Like, I don't know, like, it feels like a lot is happening. I'm feeling a little stretched, feeling a little tired.
I totally get it. It's a lot going on. I think it's a lot to keep track of, and it's a lot of added responsibility on us as developers. But I'm disgustingly positive.
Right.
For me, it is
everything.
Another thing that I love about this industry is that it's never a dull moment.
Fair.
So like the unexpected can happen at any point, and like major paradigm shifts could happen, whether it's technology, business models, new entrants, existing entrants growing bigger.
Yeah.
There's always something going on, and then like flips the whole formula upside down, and then here we go again. Let's try to figure this out.
Yep.
And I love that.
Yep.
That's why I'm in this business.
For sure.
I've lived through that many times. Like I keep telling people, I started working on mobile games before the iPhone, and during the iPhone becoming a big thing, and seeing that shift happen over the course of just 2 months, where all of a sudden people had handheld device, like everyone had handheld devices that could play games. That was massive. And like, we don't know what the next thing is going to be. We just don't know.
I mean, I started in the time of Flash games.
Yeah, totally. Like Rami started working on Flash games. There was a period in my career in which like free to play was starting to become a thing, and people were like, "What? You give people games for free? What? That doesn't make sense."
Yes.
There was a period in time in which we're going to make games and we got to put them on CDs because we're not doing these cartridges stuff anymore. People are like, what? Cartridge? Why? Cartridge is the best. You can't break it.
Yes. CDs have loading. Why would you want to do that?
Yeah, exactly. So things are bound to continue to change. And like I said, it's one of the things I love about this industry is that it keeps us on our toes. So somehow, like this podcast, in which anybody could go off script at any point, and you gotta stay on your toes.
I love it. That was an epic segue. I love it. Off script is that the title of this episode?
It's because this is a podcast in which we're supposed to talk about video games, but we talk about emails and business acquisitions. So at some point, inshallah, we'll come back to talk about the games we play. But I guess that ship has sailed for this one.
But for now, for old time's sake, let's put a doily on this episode.
Put a doily on it.
I think that's it. Thank you all for joining us for another episode, this time in 2022, Season 2 of the Habibis. We're super happy to be here and can't wait to see what this year brings, both for the gaming industry and for our podcast. Thank you and salam.
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 That was the Habibis podcast for this week. I'm Osama Dorias, your host for this episode. You can find me on Twitter at Osama Dorias. My fellow Habibis were Rami Ismail, you can find on Twitter at @THA_Rami, and Fauzi Mesmar, who you can find on Twitter at Fauzi Mesmar. Send us your questions, stories, suggestions via info@thehabibis.com. Intro and outro music was provided by Malik Zubayla, and the logo was provided by Ibrahim Hamdi. The Habibis is a weekly podcast about 3 game developers drinking good Arab tea, with new episodes launching every Friday, inshallah. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcasting service or check out thehabibis.com for more information. Thank you for listening, and Assalamu alaikum.